During the second launch of its full-scale Starship mega rocket, SpaceX will introduce a number of enhancements. These modifications include a significant adjustment to the way the rocket's two stages separate, enhancements to the propulsion system, and a strengthened launch site in South Texas that should be more resistant to the blast from 33 main engines. And those we will find out in today's episode. Hello everyone, welcome back to Elon Musk Evolution, where we bring you the most recent news about Elon Musk and his multi-billion-dollar companies, space news, and the latest science and technology. But before we begin, make sure you subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon so you don't miss any of our amazing videos. Engine testing for Ship 25, the ship that will launch on Starship's second launch, has already begun 2 months after the program's first integrated test flight. At the same time, SpaceX is nearing completion of the foundation work required at the orbital launch mount, from which Super Heavy and Starship are scheduled to launch once more no sooner than August. On Wednesday, Ship 25 tested the spin prime. The renovation and modernization of Starbase's production facilities for Starship is also progressing well. This has resulted in yet another change to the company's plans for Starship in Florida. SpaceX teams have completed the engine test campaign for the Ship 25 successfully in order to get ready for the second Starship integrated flight test. This set of tests, which includes anything from a spin prime test to a 6-engine static fire test of the vehicle's Raptor engines, is intended to qualify the vehicle for that flight. Small adjustments were made to the ship's interior tank structure and engine shielding prior to this test campaign based on the lessons acquired during the test flight. To achieve this, the SpaceX LR-11000 crane was fastened to Ship 25's nose cone in order to give its tanks structural integrity. The aft flaps were unfastened after all the work was finished, and the crane was detachably connected to the ship. Propellers were loaded onto the vehicle on the first test day, June 14, in preparation for the spin prime test that was scheduled for that day. This test simulates the startup sequence of the engine without using any actual ignition by turning up the engine oxidizer pump to full power. The truck was detanked, nevertheless, as the test was about to start. On Wednesday, the test was finally finished after a fresh effort. Several spin prime tests were carried out before the static fire testing was completed. The ship's improvements should be evaluated and the engine certified for flight in a matter of weeks at the most. Working with OLM rebar and imminent concrete pour. Without a launch platform from which the entire Starship stack could launch, none of Ship 25's testing would be worthwhile. Super Heavy Booster 7's 30 operational engines drilled a huge hole beneath the OLM during liftoff of the first integrated test flight of Starship. The first pictures of it showed a dramatic scenario and indicated that the SpaceX teams will have some challenging repair work ahead of them. In order to strengthen the soil, reinforcements were inserted deeply into the earth, and the hole was covered over the course of the previous 2 months. Teams have recently been working to lay several tons of rebar underneath the OLM. In spite of the fact that some rebar still has to be inserted, as can be seen in aerial photos taken by NSF, this work is anticipated to be concluded soon, and should be followed by a convoy of concrete trucks to fill the pit. Then, on this concrete, SpaceX will erect steel plates that have been water-cooled, which will assist support them and act as an anchor. Currently, work is being done on these steel plates next to the Sanchez facility, which is where propellants are produced. While the OLM requires 6 plates to be put between the columns, only 3 are expected to handle the large water manifolds that were spotted being hauled from Florida earlier this year. 3 of them are being worked on, 2 of which are practically finished, while the third is still receiving thorough preparations before being installed. In addition, a fresh pair of water tanks have been erected to the launch site's launch tower's backside. 6 water deluge tanks have been put in place here during the past few months, and new high-pressure tanks have also been piled and put in. 2 significant pipelines that link the water tanks and the pipes heading up to the OLM have just been put in place by teams. These 2 pipes have an upward and downward bend, which suggests that not only will the tanks be filled with water, but also the length of the pipes before the turn. In the absence of pressure, the water would not be able to continue flowing over the bend and would stop. The water will be able to get around the curve and run down the pipes all the way to the plates under the OLM after pressure is introduced via the high-pressure tanks. Vehicle production status at Starbase. Starbase's production is still going strong while SpaceX continues to work on the launch pad infrastructure. This involves the end of stacking for Ship 29 in the high bay, the beginning of stacking for Booster 11 in the mega bay, and the conclusion of stacking for Ship 29. Ship 29 has been stacked, but the vehicle still needs to be finished. The payload bay door was likewise taken off of Ship 28, its stablemate inside the high bay. Contrary to the work done on Ships 24 and 25 to seal their payload bay doors, this was not done. Contrarily, it appears that this might be done to simply update or change the current design. The ring yard close to the high bay has also been used to stage parts for Ship 30, which will follow Ship 29 in the production line. On Ship 30's nose cone, a fresh group of vent-like structures can be seen, which might point to the installation of fresh vents serving as thrusters for this area of the vehicle. It is still too early to make a firm prediction, though. Booster 11 stacking in the Mega Bay was finished earlier this month, and Booster 12's stacking is already well underway. With the exception of the engine portion, the latter vehicle's LOX tank is now finished. Beginning on June 15, stacking of the methane tank of the vehicle has been going well and should be finished by the end of the month. New production facilities for Starship at Starbase. The ground fabrication building has been entirely demolished by SpaceX over the past few weeks. The existence of new foundations that are almost the same size as this building in aerial photographs suggests that it may have been rebuilt at the Sanchez site. Teams began putting in the initial beams and columns for the Star Factory building extension during that time. It is now possible to see the whole outline of the upcoming enlargement, which will occupy the area where the ground fabrication building, propulsion building, and windbreak originally stood. With the completion of its first 2 stories, the new Mega Bay structure has also expanded in size during the past few weeks. The 3rd and 4th corners are next, and at least 2 of the corners for the 3rd level are almost finished. Plans for Starship from Florida change once more. While new facilities are being created and vehicle production is still going strong at Starbase, the same cannot be said of the Starship facility in Florida. At SpaceX's Roberts Road facility, work has ceased on the second set of tower sections, chopsticks, carriage system, and QD arm. Other construction equipment has been taken away, and contractor equipment has visibly vanished. The Florida Mega Bay components have also arrived at Starbase, where they will build the second Mega Bay in the Texas site. In order to help with the construction of that new Mega Bay, the 2 large cranes that were once at Roberts Road were also transported to Starbase. Likewise, SpaceX has modified the purpose of the structure that was before believed to be the Starship component factory. The integration of the Starlink payload with the Falcon 9 fairings is currently being processed at this site. Earlier last month, the facility was used for the first time to connect satellites for the Starlink Group 6-4 mission. Although this is the case, development on the Starship launch pad at Launch Complex 39A is still going strong. Cranes and aerial work platforms are still being used to build the site. Even though this work has slowed down, the fact that it is still being done indicates that SpaceX probably has no intentions to stop working on the Starship in Florida. Without a Florida production site, vehicles intended to take off from the Space Coast would have to go to Starbase, increasing the demand for production at the Texas complex. This implies that the massive increase of the production facilities at Starbase might have come at the expense of temporarily shifting production to Florida until the Starship's design is trustworthy and proven. Before the forthcoming second test launch of its enormous Starship rocket, SpaceX is making various changes to the vehicle. Elon Musk, the founder and CEO of SpaceX, stated that there have been really a tremendous number of changes between the previous Starship trip and this one, numbering well over 1,000. Therefore, I believe there is a lot better chance than there was for the previous flight that this one will succeed and reach orbit. It can be around 60%. How successfully we separate the stages will determine this. In a Saturday Twitter Spaces conversation with journalist Ashley Vance, Musk described some of Starship rocket upgrades. In roughly 6 weeks, the next test flight at the Starbase facility in South Texas, according to him, should be ready thanks to enhancements to the launch pad and the next Starship rocket. The best we can tell at the moment, added Musk, is that. The entirely reusable Starship spacecraft is intended to be used by SpaceX to launch satellites into orbit, build refueling tanks and propellant stores, and eventually carry cargo and personnel to the Moon and Mars. Long-term plans call for Starship, a privately funded spacecraft, to take the role of SpaceX's reliable Falcon 9 rocket and Dragon crew capsule. Officials at SpaceX were happy with the results of the first full Starship test flight, which took place on April 20. The rocket managed to ascend to a height of around 24 miles before experiencing numerous engine failures and losing control of its steering system, which caused it to crash. The test flight broke the previous record for the biggest and most powerful rocket ever flown, reaching a height of 394 feet and producing 15 million pounds of thrust from its Raptor engines powered by methane. The rocket consists of two parts. The vehicle is built with a booster stage named Super Heavy, with 33 Raptor engines to propel it through the atmosphere of the planet. After that, an upper stage with 6 engines, simply referred to as Starship, takes over to propel the craft to orbital velocity. The upper stage of the Starship might be used as a crew cabin, a payload deployer, or a tanker of propellants during operational missions. One of the biggest modifications SpaceX is making to the Starship's design is the separation of the booster from the upper stage, which takes place 3 minutes after liftoff. Stage separation was not accomplished during the April Starship test flight. In order to use what is known as hot staging, in which we fire the engines of the upper stage or ship while the first stage or booster stage engines are still on, we made a sort of late-breaking alteration that is really pretty critical to how that stage separation works, according to Musk. The hot staging approach is used on Russian rockets like the old Soyuz, but not on any contemporary U.S. launch vehicle. Before ejecting the first stage and starting the upper stage engine, rockets typically turn off their booster engines for a brief period of time. Musk stated that after turning off the majority of the engines on the Super Heavy booster, SpaceX would simultaneously start the engines on the upper stage of the Starship rocket. The result of the modification is an increase in the Starship's payload lift capacity, which was previously greater than 100 metric tons to low Earth orbit. It does, however, require that engineers add shielding to the top of the stainless steel booster, which SpaceX plans to recover and reuse repeatedly. Musk explained that the modification in design would increase the Starship rocket's cargo capacity by around 10%. Obviously, that results in kind of blasting the booster, so you've got to protect the top of the boost stage from getting incinerated by the upper stage engines, he remarked. Loss of thrust results from separating the rocket's stages when the booster engines are off. The pull of Earth's gravity begins to slow the rocket down as it climbs for a brief while. So, Musk explained, you want to start the ship engines before you completely shut down the booster engines. To allow extremely hot gas from the upper stage engines to safely flow out of the rocket structure and not just blow itself up, Musk added, SpaceX is building an extension to the top of the Super Heavy booster with vents. I believe that this poses the greatest risk to the upcoming flight. During the test launch on April 20, a number of the 33 Raptor engines on the Super Heavy rocket either failed to ignite or lost power. In the first test flight of the Starship, according to Musk, a hodgepodge of engines that took a year to build and test were used. SpaceX technicians are altering manifolds on the Raptor engines of the Starship in preparation for its second test flight. These manifolds direct hot, methane-rich gas onto each engine's combustion chamber, where it will combine with oxygen-rich gas. When bolt holes were utilized to attach the manifold to the engine in the prior configuration, hot gas may seep through and cause leaks. To address the concern regarding leaking of superheated gas, engineers will adopt an upgraded manifold design and increase the torque on bolts. The next test flight of the Starship will feature a number of other upgrades that Musk previously mentioned. Among them are electric thrust vector controls, which will take the place of the hydraulic steering system used on the April 20 launch, and stronger shielding around each of the 33 Raptor engines in the booster, which will shield them from nearby engine explosions and lessen the possibility of cascading failures. The pouring of about 1,000 cubic meters of steel-reinforced concrete beneath the pedestal of the launch pad, where the Starship and its Super Heavy launcher stand prior to liftoff, is one of the most noticeable construction activities at the Starbase launch site. During the rocket's April flight, the Raptor engine's intense blast tore a hole in the concrete slab beneath the launching platform and launched pieces of debris thousands of feet from the launch pad. The new layer of reinforced concrete will be covered with 2 steel plates that are thick and have channels run through them to allow water to flow through and shoot out the top. Consider it as a massive upside-down shower head, advised Musk. In order to combat the intense heat from the booster, water will essentially be blasted upward while the rocket is above the launch pad. The rocket will stay on the launch pad for a shorter amount of time in the next Starship test flight plan, lowering the possibility of damage. On the steel sandwich and the concrete, Musk claimed, "We're actually going overboard. The base of the pad should be in much better shape than it was the previous time after that." The idea of pouring water onto a launch pad is not new. On its Falcon 9 launch platforms in Florida and California, SpaceX employs water to reduce acoustic energy. However, administrators chose not to implement a comparable system at the Starship launch pad in Texas. "2020 hindsight," stated Musk. "We regret our actions, of course." Musk declined to answer the question of what the most difficult technical hurdle facing the Starship program is currently. He claimed that the Starship test launches are intended to resolve the unknowns of the rocket, many of which can't be rectified until engineers receive information from an actual launch. The Starship rocket's flight termination system review, which took longer than anticipated to destroy the spacecraft when it deviated from its pre-planned flight corridor in April, was one subject Musk did not cover during his Twitter Spaces conversation. The rocket is designed to quickly disintegrate before it poses a hazard to inhabited regions, thanks to the destruct mechanism, which operates by pyrotechnic charges that explode to split open the fuel tanks of the rocket. Any modifications to the destruct system must be approved by the Federal Aviation Administration, the regulatory body in charge of ensuring that rocket launches don't put the public in danger. The April 20 test flight of the Starship did not pose a threat to any public spaces, but Musk stated in statements made shortly after the test flight that it might take longer to requalify the flight termination system before the next Starship launch than it would to address the other issues on SpaceX's docket. On Saturday, Musk conceded that the timing of the upcoming Starship test launch might not be in SpaceX's control. There are a lot of factors here that are beyond our control. With that being said, do you think the upcoming second test flight will be a success? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Please subscribe and don't forget to like today's video. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.